Hello, my friends. Well, any of you who have been around for a while can probably tell that I am feeling better. Yay! Um, and I'm still really putting an emphasis on resting. And it's been a great opportunity for me also to put to work something that I know I've been sharing with you, which is really feeling the natural periods of activity and rest in my body. And one of the things I wanted to share with you today, because in our loops and scoops, we're really about the refreshment of attention and also about moving from fear to love through presence. And both of those are of great interest to me. One of the things that I learned in this last little episode of being sick was that because I had this kind of flattened sense of energy, I wasn't experiencing any contrasts. So I didn't actually know how sick I was until I started feeling better. And that was the contrast of there was one day where I felt this kind of expansion in my chest and a little bit of kind of uprising energy. And I realized I hadn't felt that for 2 weeks, but I didn't know because I wasn't experiencing it. I didn't have any inner contrast. And my sense is that it's kind of like the boiling frog story. If you just gradually are getting less and less alive, you don't notice. And so my sense is that for many of us, that's been part of our experience during the pandemic, is just getting flattened and flattened and flattened and more flattened. And so one of the things that I wanted to play with today was creating our own sense of contrast so that you can have a sense of here's where I was and here's where I've moved to. Because if we don't have any sense of how it is and anything to compare that to, our comparative mind gets anxious. So one of the things I wanted to have you experiment with is giving your curious attention to yourself. And we're going to do something with that. But first, I wanted to have you play with contrasting the kind of attention that you've been taught to give yourself, which is critical attention. So I'd like you to do that for just a moment. We won't do it enough that it gets baked in, but I'd like you to just give yourself a little bit of critical attention. And I love the way you're exaggerating that, Lindsay. So if you can, you want to go ahead and exaggerate how you do that with yourself, the way you talk to yourself when you're being critical. But I'd like you to also notice, where do you aim that? Do you aim it at your head? Do you aim it at your whole body? Do you have a particular favorite? Like I used to aim my criticism to my thighs most of the time. That was where that would sort of land. So when you're giving yourself critical attention, I'd like you to notice, like just choose a part of you to give critical attention to. And I'd like you to notice the actual impact on that part of you. And I want you to exaggerate. So I'll give you an example. I learned how to give myself critical attention primarily from my mother. You know, I didn't get a whole lot of attention from my dad, but my mothers were pretty exclusively critical. And so what I realized when I started exaggerating my experience of that was that I would go into a cringe. And if I'm exaggerating it now, it was a little bit of a tuck over here. And I realized that I was trying to close my ears without being able to just go, stop it, you know, as a kid. So, what I'd like you to do is to give yourself critical attention and exaggerate the place in your body and your response to that. So, just make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, beautiful. And then notice how that impacts your movement, your breathing. I'm pretty sure it's going to shorten your breathing, but notice how that impacts you. And then I'd like you to let yourself do something that allows you to get more space in that area of you. Now, whether that's taking love scoops, giving love scoops to it, simply giving your curious attention to that part of you, and let yourself really exaggerate going the other way. So, expanding or opening or making a big sound or opening your ears. So, really playing with the taking both of those a little bit more in the direction they're going. And when I do that, I can primarily feel a lot more opening on the sides of my ribs, some in the front, but I realize that I'm getting kind of my, what it does is open up sort of my wingspan. So I'm able then to reach out more. So notice when you open from that place that you've been criticizing, notice what else becomes possible. So I notice that when I open, I immediately, my attention wants to then naturally go to the outside, and I'm noticing more. So, particularly, I'm noticing more color and more of where the light is and what is emerging in the light. And so, one of the things I'm noticing outside is the color and the light on the leaves is so much more vivid due to our rains that we had a while ago. So my sense is that when we are contracting and giving ourselves or the world critical attention, we also narrow our ability for presence, but also noticing what's emerging, what's going well. Oh, look at how things are blooming. So the deadening of our perception that can come from just the same old gets refreshed by shifting your attention. And what I wanted to add into that in our practice today is that when you notice yourself, exaggerate a little bit what you're noticing. So wherever you're giving your attention to, now shift into curious attention. So you can create that if you're not practiced at that, you can create that by creating a hmm, hmm. Kids naturally do this when they're wondering, and it can actually kind of shut off your critical voice and open up your curiosity. So the shifting your attention, and when your attention lands out, I'd like you to just exaggerate in your body your experience of what you're noticing. So for me, I'm noticing this play of the light and the shadow. And so I'm drawn to let my hands paint and sculpt that because it's such its own little wonderful painting. And when I've done that, then I'm going to give attention to myself. And my attention is landing right at the top of my shoulder blades. And so I'm going to exaggerate a little bit of all this stuff I've been holding over the last few weeks. So I'm going to hold that for a moment and then give it my curious attention and see what wants to happen. And again, I'm getting more breath. And so for me, my theme today is wingspan, is letting my wings open up. We often have a hawk that comes to land on our front yard fountain, and a big hawk, and we have a fountain that he can kind of bathe himself in. And so he gets all in there and then he starts flapping around and moving all the water out. And so imagine if you landed in there and you kind of got, oh, something's needing a little attention, and you get in there and you give it attention, and then you open up to what your body wants to do from that. And we can be a source of that kind of curious attention for others as we're moving around in the world. So, what I'd love to have you do now is let your attention, your curious attention, go to somebody in the group. And I want to suggest that you give your attention to somebody that you don't know, and your curious attention. And you just let your attention circulate around them. And whatever your attention wants to do, I like to appreciate, that is, giving my sensitive awareness to. And then what I notice, because I'm giving my attention to Teresa, and I'm noticing this glow in her. And so I'm bringing that back to me and letting myself enjoy that glow in me. And what I was noticing is this boom, 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 boom. My attention went back and forth between me and her very quickly. I didn't make that happen, but I noticed that was what was wanting to happen. It was kind of a little celebration. So notice when you give your attention to somebody else in the group, how that affects you. So you're giving your sensitive attention, and then that actually impacts you. And then let yourself notice how you want to respond to that sharing of attention. Yeah, beautiful. And then you can give your attention to someone else. So we don't realize that how much our attention to ourselves is impacted by the attention that we give to others. But what if we just included that? I give attention to you, and it makes more attention available for me. And I give attention to me, and it makes more attention available for you. And I'm giving a little bit of attention, just had my fax machine go off there. So I'm just going to include that, rather than going, that shouldn't be happening. I'm on a call and the fax machine should not be going off. So here we are in home Zoom world where these kinds of things happen. So we can just include those. So let yourself just take a moment now to notice, just with that play, if you have refreshed yourself. Because very often our lack of refreshment comes from kind of the not shifting up all of the different elements of giving and receiving attention. And so I want to invite you this week to let yourself play with giving yourself curious attention. And rather than letting that bounce off, go a little bit more deeply into it, so that you exaggerate just a little bit or a lot what you're noticing in that area. And then let your attention, kind of be a little like fluffing a pillow, and notice what that does. And then giving your attention out, and particularly just as people that you're noticing as you're moving about in the world this week, because the gift of your attention can have more positive impact, I think, than you really can imagine. And it is a gift that we have total control over. We can give our attention, and then we can enjoy the heightened awareness from letting our attention circulate. And that's the big thing that we're after. If you're feeling kind of this week, just do a little shifting of your attention. And I sometimes like to use little body memory cues. And this is really one of my favorites, is that, I give some out and I give some to me. So I can also do love scoop in, and then I can do a love scoop out. So that is a little memory. If you're kind of feeling, or you're at your computer, even for me, just doing that makes a huge difference. So thank you for being here today, and lovely to see your faces and to share energy with you. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And I'm going to take off now, and please continue as long as you like and forever. All right, bye now.